Welcome to Oyate Today. Oyate in Lakota means people. Brought to you by Native Sun News Today. Hi, welcome to Oyate Today. I am your host, Richie Richards. Oyate Today is produced by Tim and Jackie Gallego. Tim is an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux tribe. Our guest tonight is Richard Brown, a very special guest actually, because we have the 75th anniversary of D-Day happening on June 6, 2019 of this year. So I'm excited to have a conversation with you. Your father was a very, very special man. His name was Corporal Garfield T. Brown, and he was there at D-Day. So, but before that, let's learn a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Richard.
Of course, I'm Richard Brown. Born and raised in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. I went to various colleges, United Tribes at Carpentry. I went to Fort Lewis College for natural resources. And I've actually worked with the OST Water Resources Department with stream assessment, substrate identification, just to check the water quality of all our streams to make sure that they were clean and not polluted as much. I then attended Oglala Lakota College. I became a bus driver because I needed a job back in '95. Being a bus driver, watching the children come, picking them up and watching them throughout the day, and just enjoying their view of life as children. But also noticing that a lot of them were using me as a father figure, calling me uncle, some dad. And my job was supposed to be temporary, but the children grew so attached to me and I to them that they asked me to become a teacher, and I got my CDA, Child Development Associates. I went back to college. I received my AA, and I almost got my bachelor's, but it's been a long and slow process. And I've been teaching preschool since 1999. Wow, this is 20 years.
20 years, wow.
And I am currently working with the Youth and Family Services here in Rapid City, helping to assist and teach the children social, emotional, and just everyday life activities and experiences.
That's got to be rewarding.
Yes, it is. Seeing them accomplish these milestones in life and preparing them for their next step in life, which is kindergarten, and watching them accomplish this, seeing their excitement on their faces, and some of their parents too, which really, we're glad to see a male teacher at this age working with their students, and I have actually seen former students up here enrolling their children.
Oh, wow.
And that shows you how long I've been working in this program, and they still remember me, and they're like, wow, and I'm like, wow, it hasn't been that long.
That's like coming full circle for them.
Yes, and they still remember me, and they said, I was one of the best teachers they had. But, every grade they have their favorite teacher. But
sure.
The 3 to 5 year olds, that's the beginning. That's where they absorb the most in their brain. And that's where you can instill all the values and things they need to continue their education.
Sure. Your dad looks like you're following in some very big footsteps with your father. Your father was a great man as well, and he's a Lakota code talker, and he was honored as such back in 2013. So let's talk a little bit about him now. What did you learn about your dad's service? What branch was he in, by the way?
He was in the U.S. Army.
Okay.
All we knew growing up was that he was in the Army. He was in World War II with the 1st Infantry Division. And now there are many units. That's all we knew.
Wow, okay.
We did not know the unit or anything like that. So just 1st Infantry Division, U.S. Army.
And then you had to put in some legwork and learn a little bit more?
And then, yes, I did have to do some more research. I called the 1st Division Museum in Wheaton, Illinois. That's where they keep all the records for the service members in their unit. But the National Archives had a fire in 1973, and the majority of the servicemen's records were destroyed.
Wow.
So finding out a lot more in-depth details is very difficult, since there were no microchips, microfilm.
So that was the only place for these records then?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Yes.
Jeez, imagine that. What did you learn from your dad as far as his experience as during his time period there?
Some of the stories growing up were mainly when there was a documentary on PBS where they were showing war films, and he'll be quiet and then say, I remember that, or I was there. and he'll tell a little bit about it. But seeing the look in his eyes as he kind of glazed over, and you can tell that in hindsight, he was reliving those moments by watching those videos. And he'll tell a little bit about, at that point, they were showing on the TV what he was going through at that moment. And it was very interesting, but I did not really want to ask him more questions to make him get more in depth in it, because you could tell his eyes were kind of tearing up and glassy as he remembered those war experiences.
So he was reliving and the emotional
Yes,
impact
he
and
was
all that.
reliving it, and I didn't want to, you know.
What was some of those memories, and what was, say, one of his favorite stories to tell or something?
Some of the famous stories was, I know before a lot of natives went off to battle, they have ceremonies and prayers for them and to have our ancestors protect them. Mm-hmm. And one of the stories that he did mention was when they were in France, and they were coming across this farm. They sent a recon to go check out the farmhouse and barns to make sure they were secure, and they were settling down for the night to get some much needed rest. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of the night, a big hand grabbed my dad's head. The palm was on his forehead by his brow, and the fingers reached all the way around to the back of his neck. Wow. And shook him. And he woke up, you know, kind of startled. He woke up his platoon and said, "We got to get the heck out of here." And at that moment, he's been in for a couple years, so they listened to him. They all packed up and they moved away. And then just as they got like a quarter mile away, you can start hearing artillery shells coming over. And as they got that quarter mile away, the barn where they were resting in exploded.
So do you think that that was some type of spiritual intervention then?
Yes, I do believe so, because my grandma, Lena Fast Horse, was very spiritual, very traditional. Up until when I was young, we used to go to the Iwipi ceremonies and ask for them to look out for family members who are sick or in dire trouble. So yes, I do have the faith. And
so that, even when they were over there, they still had relatives over here praying for them and doing ceremonies for them and ensuring their safety. Yes, and things like that.
Yes.
So that's amazing. That's a pretty amazing story, definitely. When did you find out he was a code talker then? I know you talked about his research and the records being lost, but when did you find out that your father was a Lakota code talker?
Well, sadly, my dad passed away on January 5th of 2000. And this was a month or two after his death. Was going through our cedar chest full of memories and memorabilia and stuff like that. And we came across a certificate that was honoring him as a code talker. And I was just shocked because, you know, at the time I was like, what's a code talker? And it was dated for April 24th, 1996.
Could you hold that up and kind of turn it around there so we can, oh, awesome, okay. And you found that in his records?
We found that amongst his folders and files. And he never did mention this. This was from the Hot Springs domiciliary, in the VA domiciliary. And we never knew that. He never mentioned it to us. And it wasn't, you know, put in newspapers or anything. This is something they did, and I don't know if he requested it to still be kept secret, because nobody still knew about the code talkers at that moment. So it was quite a surprise.
And it's been celebrated and made into movies and all these things and honorings and such, because they played such an important role. And so just for our viewers who are not aware of what a code talker is, just briefly, if you could tell me what a code talker is. Okay,
a code talker is, well, right now, as far as we knew, there were 25 tribes across Turtle Island, America, that had their own tribe members as code talkers. But those of them are just still being declassified. And a code talker, from what I found out, was a tribal member from a certain tribe using their tribal dialect to use their language and terminology that they had to come up with for military artillery, tanks, and all that, and use that as a code to send messages a lot quicker than what the U.S. Army was usually using at that time, which took anywhere from a half hour to 45 minutes to an hour to decipher.
And this is something they can do instantly.
And this is something they can do within 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah. You know, let's take a break, Richard. I want to hear more about this. We'll be back after a short break.
Closed captioning for Oyate today is brought to you by Black Hills Energy. Native Son News has been voted the best weekly newspaper in its class for 2015 by the South Dakota and North Dakota Newspaper Associations. You can find a copy of the Native Son News at many businesses and vending machines in Rapid City and the surrounding area, and on all 9 reservations. We publish every Wednesday, so advertisers and subscribers can reach our diverse readership by calling 605-721-1266. The Native Son News covers the other side of the story.
You can't predict life's ups and downs. You just give it all you've got to stay on top. But it's easier with a partner like Security First Bank. Since 1898, we've been riding with you through the country's biggest ups and downs. And this is where we'll stay. Security First Bank, a relationship you can count on. Member FDIC.
I got a crick in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. That I don't wanna get on. It's very sad when all that I could do was remember you. You know I usually say no, but if you throw me love, I'll throw you some more.
Hi, welcome back to Oyate Today. Once again, our guest tonight is Richard Brown, son of Corporal Garfield T. Brown, a Lakota code talker. And we started to talk a little bit about what a code talker is, their role in the missions over there during World War II is when your father served. And so the 75th anniversary of the of Normandy is coming up, D-Day basically, they call it Normandy, but of D-Day is coming up here, and it's going to be celebrated June 6th, 2019 of this year, and your father happened to be there. And could you tell us what what you learned about your father being there then?
Okay, Dad used to talk about, before D-Day, all the preparation he had in England, like 6 months prior to that. And of course, the date of the invasion was not set in stone. There were weather complications, there were storms, there were high seas. But the day of actually loading up on their transports to cross the English Channel to Normandy was very terrible. There were wind, high seas, waves, and boarding onto the landing craft from their transport boats was very dangerous also because of the waves coming up and down. Mm. Now, when they got into their transport, of course, they circled a couple times, but when they started heading towards land, my dad being a radio operator, he had his radio and his carbine. And as they got close to the D-Day beach, Omaha Beach, of course, the Germans opened up fire. He said there were soldiers jumping over the sides to escape the bullets. And he made it over without being injured, but he still had his 40 to 45 pound radio he had to take care of and not get wet.
Wow.
And of course, where he hit the water was still like 100 feet, 100 yards, 150 yards to the beach. Mm-hmm. So he carried his 40 to 50 pound radio above his head with one hand while carrying his M1 carbine in the other to the beach.
While being shot out with the waves up to their chest. Wow.
And with dead bodies floating around next to him. And then once he got to the beach, of course, he had to cross the beach, which in itself was
And that's that
terror.
very famous scene and very, tragic scene of officers and, infantrymen.
Yes.
Yeah. It's,
as shown in
yes.
Saving Private Ryan,
Yes.
which was
and your
very
father
terror.
survived and went through that.
And he survived through that, made it to the beach. Mm-hmm. And once the secured the beachhead, one of his commanders actually called him over and asked him to lift up his radio, and he thought maybe he was going to make a call. But he said, lift it over your head. And he lifted it up with two hands, and he said, no, lift it up with one hand. And my dad tried, but he could not lift it over his hand. And he said, son, you were seen coming ashore, carrying that radio above your head with one hand. He said, well, heck, sir, I was being shot and bombed at.
Yeah, yeah, much
And,
different
of course,
circumstances. Yeah,
the adrenaline was flowing, and
Yeah.
of course, seeing all the devastation and death around him was quite the incentive to get to the beach. And he knew he had to protect his radio, which was vital at that time.
which was a major part of his specific mission. Then was to
Yes.
survive the communications and.
Communications up to that point were very vital once they secured the beachhead and moving forward.
This might be a non, I guess, not a really good question, but your dad was a fluent speaker then.
Yes, he was a fluent speaker. He would always speak, and of course, my mom and grandma also spoke fluently.
Are
during
you a
that time.
fluent speaker as well?
No, I'm not. And I did ask that question of my mom one time, and you know, some say because of the boarding schools, they wanted to not. They punished the children for speaking their language, but still, they kept it underground. And I think Dad's experience, him being a Lakota speaker and then being put in that situation as a forward observer and radio man to radio back positions of artillery and troops, put his life in danger constantly every day. He'd be out there 2 days to 2 weeks. And I think teaching me the language, I thought, in his thinking, he didn't want to put me in that kind of danger.
Sure. You know, you brought these
Yes.
photos on. Let's have a look at those because I really want to kind of show the. Well, I mean, he just looks like a very young man there. How old
What I
was he?
found out, this was taken just after the war ended in 1945, and he turned 21 in January of 1945.
Okay,
So he was just 21 years old at the time.
just a young man.
Yes, and this I found out was Guy Lavoie. That was his name. I didn't find out much about him, but I was always often wondering, like in the wind talkers with the Navajos, they had somebody by their side all the time to protect them,
Yeah.
to protect the code, or to possibly
Do what they had to do in
what
order
they
to
had
protect
do
the code.
to protect the code. And I was wondering if he was one of the guys
Yeah.
that was assigned to my dad to do such a thing.
Which would have meant, and we can kind of just say it, if necessary, he would have had to
He would have had
take
to-
out your father
he would have had
to
to
protect
take
the
him out.
code.
Yes.
Wow. But at the same time, they probably developed quite the
Yes.
friendship and relationship,
And
I would assume.
there were some stories about Dad about how he became really close with a lot of non-natives, and he once said, "I will never hate a non-native or a white man," and was like, "Really?" And he said, "During the war, they saved my life so many times," and that just tells me how much danger he was in constantly during the years that he was there, and them saving his life so that he can, in turn, save the lives of others.
That's a good point because if he's carrying around a 40-pound pack, 45-pound pack with knowing that he's doing the communications, he probably had a target on his back specifically.
Yes,
I would
because
assume.
in those radios in those times, they had to carry their own antenna, which stuck out maybe 5 to 6 feet,
So they
can transmit back.
Wow.
So that was
Your dad's a
constantly in
pretty
danger.
amazing man. I mean, that's just great. I mean, I
And,
can't believe some
He
of
also talked about Killer Kane, one of his buddies. They were good buddies. And they were on patrol. They were on recon, radioing back troop movements and stuff. And they were on this little knoll, and they heard troops coming. And they said, "Get down, here they come." And as they peeked over the ridge, they saw a platoon of soldiers, maybe 35 to 40 soldiers, German soldiers coming. And my dad's partner said, "We can take him." And my dad was like, hell no, look at how many of them there are. There's only 2 of us. He said, "No, we can take him." So he said, Killer Kane jumped over that knoll, and Dad said, "I had to follow him." So he both jumped over, screaming and hollering, letting off a couple rounds.
Yeah.
Surprised the Germans so much, they threw down their weapons and surrendered. They captured those Germans and
Yeah.
they marched them back to camp, which was a great surprise.
That's funny. I read somewhere, speaking of capturing, your father captured a Nazi flag. Where did he get
Yes.
that at then? Because I've seen stories about it. I've seen it up at Crazy Horse at an event a while back. But where did he capture that?
Yes, this was in January of 45, during the Battle of the Bulge, actually, in Bastogne, around Bastogne, Belgium, the Ardennes Forest. After they penetrated the Dragon Teeth, which the German defense was at that time protecting them, they came to the city of Aachen, Germany. And this was the first German city to be overrun by the 1st Infantry Division and my dad's unit. And that is where, once they secured the city, he found
flag.
found the flag,
Yeah.
took it down, rolled it up, and put it in his backpack.
That's amazing.
Yes,
That's pretty
and-
amazing. Your father's a great man. I woke up this morning and complained about having to throw a load of laundry, and so it really puts things into perspective. We'll be back after a short break.
Want some more?
What's he doing?
But he can't.
Look at him. It's just not done.
Please, sir, I want some more.
More? More?
More? Please, sir.
He has asked for more!
Thank you.
What?
Well, he did say please, sir.
Yes, he did. And thank you.
Yeah, and thank you.
He's a wonderful boy. I do like the boy.
Please, and thank you. Pass it on.
Thank you.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
Why are we getting killed like this?
Kyle's not here. Got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Harsh.
Hey, he knew not to drink. We've made that clear to all of our kids, right?
No, not really.
Bill, if we don't tell them what we expect and why they shouldn't drink, how are they gonna know?
Talk. They hear you.
You can do it if you try.
Hi, welcome back to Oyate Today. Once again, our guest tonight is Richard Brown, son of Corporal Garfield T. Brown, a Lakota code talker. And, you know, I've really been enjoying your stories about your father. And, you know, I really want to thank you for coming on and sharing those because, you know, it's men like that and women like that nowadays that are really helping to shape some of the things that are happening in the world without acknowledgement from many. So, you know, your dad went many years without being recognized as the contribution, as well as the others and the other code talkers from the other nations. So it was in November 20th of 2013 that your dad was finally honored and given a Lakota code talker coin.
Yes.
Where is that coin currently?
The coin currently resides at the Crazy Horse Mountain Museum, which we donated, me and my family.
That's your family here?
Which me and my family and my brothers and sisters donated and gifted to the Crazy Horse Mountain Museum for the benefit and the stories and the knowledge of our tribe, of our region, of the nation.
So it's going to be a permanent part of their collection?
Yes, it'll be a permanent
Wow.
part. It is displayed only temporary now until his permanent display is completed and fixed.
Sure.
And people can see it every day. So
Sure, that's just amazing. I'm going to have to get up there and see that. You brought a book that kind of gave a reference to some of the things that you've learned, and use it as a reference for yourself
Yes.
as well. What is this book then?
this book is called Proud Americans of World War II. Now that is the unit's name, and it's the 2nd Battalion, 32nd Field Artillery, 18th Regiment, 1st Infantry Division. Now, in this book, which I discovered by talking with the 1st Division Museum, Mr. Andrew Woods, the curator, this book actually told me of how Dad became a code talker.
How was that?
And this book is compiled by stories told by other soldiers. There was a soldier who wrote this story saying that there were 3 natives in their unit, and they didn't know what tribe they were from. But these 3 natives, Garfield Brown, my dad, Anthony Omaha Boy, a Seconjou from St. Francis, and John Smith from White Earth, Minnesota, they actually came to their commanders asking to use the Sioux language to send messages. And at the time, they were the U.S. were under the 78th Battle Axe English, Great Britain command. So they had to send for the English commanders to come down and listen to their story. And once they listened to them, because the English were fascinated by natives at the time in the early 40s. They listened to them and they said, okay, we will give it a try. So my dad, Garfield Brown, Anthony Omaha, and John Smith went back, and it actually says in the book that they honed their terminology, meaning they had to come up with Sioux words for military equipment and battalions and stuff. And then after that, they gave it a try, and that's how they started.
Isn't that amazing how language is used like that and how they volunteered basically?
Yes,
in some level.
They volunteered, and back then there was no social media or newspapers, so I know there were code talkers in World War I. Now, did the word of those code talkers spread to other tribes by word of mouth? Or how did they come up with the idea? Was it on their own, or did they hear about it from the other tribes? Which was kind of amazing. But I know during World War I, it was also kept a secret in case they had to use it again.
Wow, that's just amazing. You brought another plaque here, and I'll just take this book from you, but you brought this plaque here. What is that exactly?
Yes, also during my research, I came across a general order where the French government awarded my dad and his unit French Croix de Guerre medals. That means a Medal of War. One was for Kasserine Pass, North Africa, and that was where the Americans really had their baptism by fire. And the Germans won that battle, but they regrouped and came back and pushed the Germans back, and they started to push across North Africa. Now, during the general order said they were awarded the medal in 1946, but by then my dad was already back here in the United States. And this here is written by the Consulate General of France in Chicago, the Honorable Vincent Floriani. And he actually came to present this honoring in person to my dad, his unit, to the Native Americans who fought, and to all Americans who helped liberate his country of France. Now, in this here, it just talks about how he was a code talker, and some of the battles that he was included in was Algeria, French Morocco, Tunisia, Sicily, Normandy, northern France, Rhineland, the Ardennes Forest, and Central Europe. So my dad was actually in all the major battles in the European theater of
Those are all the
operation.
major ones I'm aware of. Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
And I used a reference as the movie, The Big Red One. And French Morocco in the beginning of the movie, Dad was also there on November 8th, 1942.
Thank you, Richard, for coming on our show tonight. This has been amazing. This has been a really good discussion, and I'm excited for the 75th anniversary. Your father was there. Just want to thank you for bringing those stories and sharing them with us. I want to thank our producers. I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Prairie Edge for hosting our show tonight. Of course, Mr. Brown, and I want to thank you for making Oyate Today a part of your night.
You've been watching Oyate Today, brought to you by Native Sun News Today.
Wait,